Imagine floating alone in the middle of the ocean. No land in sight. No rescue coming. Just you, a tiny raft, and sharks circling below every single day. This is the true story of Steven Callahan. A man who faced the impossible and lived to tell about it. Steven Callahan was 29 years old in 1981. He wasn't just any sailor. He was a boat designer and builder. A man who understood the ocean better than most. Steven had spent years perfecting his craft. Creating boats that could handle anything the sea could throw at them. His masterpiece was Napoleon Solo. A 21-foot sloop that Steven designed and built with his own hands. Every plank. Every sail. Every piece of hardware. Steven knew this boat like his own body. It was his life's work floating on the water. Steven had already sailed Napoleon Solo across the Atlantic once. From Newport, Rhode Island to England. The boat performed perfectly. Strong winds, rough seas, long nights alone. Napoleon Solo handled it all. Steven felt confident about his next journey. The Mini Transat 6.50 was one of sailing's most challenging races. Single-handed sailors crossing the Atlantic in boats under 21 feet. Steven entered the race in 1981. He sailed from England toward the Caribbean. But bad weather hit the fleet hard. Several boats sank. Many others suffered serious damage. Steven's boat was damaged too. His mast broke during severe weather. He dropped out of the race in Spain. Made repairs. Then decided to continue his journey solo. Not for a race. For the pure joy of sailing. Steven loved being alone on the ocean. It was where he felt most alive. January 29, 1982. Steven left the Canary Islands off the coast of Africa. His destination was Antigua in the Caribbean. A routine voyage for an experienced sailor. The first week went perfectly. Smooth trade winds pushed Napoleon Solo westward. Steven was having an excellent time. February 4, 1982. Day 7 of the voyage. Steven was sleeping in his cabin when disaster struck. Something massive hit the boat with tremendous force. The impact woke Steven instantly. He knew something was terribly wrong. Steven jumped up and assessed the damage. A huge hole had been punched in the hull below the waterline. Water was filling the boat faster than any pump could handle. Napoleon Solo was sinking. Steven had minutes to act. What hit his boat? Steven never found out for certain. Most likely a whale. Sperm whales are common in that area. A collision with a sleeping whale could easily destroy a small boat. The whale probably survived. Steven's boat did not. Because Napoleon Solo was well designed, it sank slowly. This gave Steven precious time to gather supplies. He made multiple trips back to the sinking boat. Diving below to retrieve critical survival equipment. Each trip was dangerous. The boat could sink completely at any moment. Steven grabbed his emergency kit. Life raft. Some food and water. Navigation charts. A short spear gun. Signal flares. A flashlight. 3 solar stills for making fresh water. A sleeping bag. A piece of foam cushion. Everything he could carry. The life raft 6 feet across. Bright orange. Designed to keep one person alive until rescue arrived. Steven climbed inside just as Napoleon Solo disappeared beneath the waves. Years of work. Thousands of hours of craftsmanship. Gone in minutes. Now Steven was truly alone. The life raft bobbed like a cork on the enormous Atlantic swells. Steven could see nothing but water in every direction. The nearest land was hundreds of miles away. Shipping lanes were far to the north. Few planes flew over this remote area. Steven knew the statistics. People lost at sea rarely survive more than a few days. Exposure kills quickly. Dehydration is deadly. Starvation takes weeks but always wins. The ocean doesn't care about human hopes and dreams. But Steven had advantages most people don't. He understood the ocean. He knew how to read weather patterns, water currents, wind directions. This knowledge might keep him alive long enough for rescue. The life raft came with basic survival supplies. Some water, emergency food, fishing gear, signaling devices. Enough for maybe 2 weeks if Steven was extremely careful. 2 weeks should be plenty of time for rescue, right? Steven began rationing immediately. Tiny sips of water. Small bites of food. He had to make everything last as long as possible. But he also had to stay strong enough to signal for help when rescue came. Days passed. No rescue planes. No ships. Steven realized he was drifting in one of the most remote parts of the Atlantic. The area between Africa and the Caribbean sees very little traffic. Steven might be alone for weeks. The solar stills became Steven's lifeline for water production. These devices use sunlight to evaporate seawater. The vapor condenses into fresh water. But Steven's solar stills didn't work properly at first. They were World War II prototypes without instructions. Steven had to figure out how they worked. He took apart one of the 3 stills. Studied its components. Learned how the evaporation process functioned. Then he repaired the other 2 stills using this knowledge. The 2 working solar stills could produce about a pint of fresh water per day. Combined. That's barely enough to survive. Steven also created improvised rainwater collection systems. Every drop of fresh water was precious beyond measure. Then came the sharks. Steven first noticed them on day 3. Dark shadows moving beneath the raft. Circling slowly. Studying this strange new object in their territory. Steven counted at least 6 sharks. Some were massive. 10 feet long or more. Tiger sharks. Bull sharks. Oceanic whitetips. All dangerous predators. Any one of them could destroy the life raft with a single bite. Steven would be helpless in the water. These sharks ruled their domain. Steven was just visiting. But something interesting happened. The sharks seemed curious rather than aggressive. They would bump the raft gently. Testing it. But they didn't attack. Steven realized the sharks were attracted to the small fish that gathered in the raft's shadow. The small fish hiding under the raft became Steven's primary food source. Triggerfish. Flying fish. Dorados. But catching them was extremely dangerous. Steven had to lean over the side of the raft. His arms dangled in the water where sharks cruised constantly. The short spear gun he had retrieved from Napoleon Solo allowed him to catch fish from a safer distance. But the spear was attached to a fishing line. Steven had to be careful not to lose it. One lost spear could mean starvation. Steven also created improvised fishing tools. He bent safety pins into hooks. Used pieces of cloth as lures. Anything that might attract fish. His engineering background helped him solve these problems systematically. Catching triggerfish became Steven's specialty. These aggressive fish were curious about anything new. They would approach the raft to investigate. Steven learned their behavior patterns. When they fed. Where they swam. How to catch them efficiently. Dorados were the prize catch. Large fish that could provide several meals. But they were strong and smart. Steven's light fishing line often broke when he hooked a big dorado. He learned to play them carefully. Wear them down slowly. Flying fish would sometimes land directly in the raft at night. Steven would wake up to find breakfast waiting for him. These lucky moments felt like miracles. Small gifts from the ocean that was trying to kill him. Organs provided essential vitamins. Eyes contained precious moisture. Bones supplied calcium for his weakening skeleton. Fish blood was liquid nutrition. Nothing was wasted. Every bite was precious. Steven also tried catching seabirds that would land on the raft to rest. Birds would provide fat and protein his body desperately needed. But the birds were too quick and alert. Steven managed to catch only a few during his entire ordeal. Week after week passed. Steven's body began breaking down from constant exposure. The tropical sun burned his skin despite the raft's small canopy. Salt water created painful sores that wouldn't heal. His hands bled from handling fish and equipment daily. The life raft itself became Steven's biggest ongoing challenge. After weeks at sea, it started failing. Seams leaked air constantly. Fabric wore thin from sun exposure. Equipment broke from overuse. Steven had to become a master repair technician. Steven used a fishing line to patch small holes. Pieces of clothing to reinforce weak spots. Duct tape to seal larger tears. He developed techniques for finding leaks underwater. Methods for making repairs while the raft stayed inflated. The raft's floor was particularly problematic. Steven's weight created constant pressure on the thin rubber. Small tears would grow into major holes. Steven spent hours each day just maintaining the raft's integrity. But the mental challenges were worse than physical pain. Complete isolation. No human contact. No conversations except with himself. The ocean stretched endlessly in every direction. Many people would have given up. Gone insane. Let themselves die. Steven had something special that kept him fighting. He was an engineer by training. His mind worked systematically. He approached survival like a technical problem. Every challenge needed a solution. Every day brought new data to analyze. He created detailed routines and schedules. Morning, check the raft for damage and leaks. Inspect all equipment. Plan the day's activities. Afternoon, fish and maintain solar stills. Evening, collect rainwater if storms approached. Plan for the next day. Steven also kept a detailed log of his experiences. He recorded weather patterns. Fish behavior. Equipment performance. This documentation served multiple purposes. It kept his mind active. It provided data for survival decisions. It gave him hope that someone would read his story someday. Rain became Steven's most precious resource for fresh water. When storms approached, he would spread out every piece of fabric he had. The sleeping bag. Pieces of clothing. Anything that could collect water. Every drop was precious. Steven learned to predict weather patterns by studying cloud formations. Wind changes. Ocean swells. Wave patterns. This knowledge helped him prepare for storms. It also helped him estimate his position and direction of drift. Storms brought fresh water but also danger. High winds could flip the raft. Large waves could wash Steven overboard. Lightning posed a constant threat. Steven had to balance the need for water against the risk of death. Steven talked to himself constantly. Created imaginary conversations with friends and family. Made up stories and songs. Anything to keep his mind active and engaged. Silence could drive him insane. Some days brought hope. Calm weather, successful fishing, and no equipment failures. Steven felt optimistic about rescue. He maintained his routines and planned for the future. These days kept him mentally strong. Bad days brought storms, equipment failures, and no food. Steven felt death approaching. Despair overwhelmed him. These days tested his will to survive. Many people would have given up during the worst moments. What kept Steven fighting when hope seemed impossible? He had people waiting for him. Family who loved him. Friends who believed in him. Giving up meant abandoning everyone who cared about him. Steven also had unfinished business. He was an inventor and creator. He had boats to design. Problems to solve. Adventures still waiting. Patents to file. Innovations to develop. Death would have to wait its turn. His body had adapted to the harsh conditions. His skin had toughened. His fishing skills had improved dramatically. The solar stills provided just enough water. Steven began to believe he might actually survive. But the ocean had more challenges waiting. Equipment failures became more frequent. The spear gun broke. Steven had to repair it with fishing line and improvised parts. The solar stills developed leaks. Critical repairs were needed daily. By day 50, Steven's situation became truly critical. His body weight had dropped to dangerous levels. His skin was covered in painful sores that wouldn't heal. Muscle mass had wasted away dramatically. His body was consuming itself to stay alive. The life raft was barely holding together. Patches covered patches. Air leaked constantly from multiple locations. Steven spent hours each day just keeping the raft inflated. One major failure would kill him instantly. Most critically, Steven was drifting away from the Caribbean shipping lanes. The trade winds and currents were carrying him toward the middle of the ocean. Away from any chance of rescue. Time was running out fast. Steven suddenly came across a flock of birds. Different species than he had seen before. These were land birds. Birds that only lived near islands. Steven realized he was approaching the Caribbean island chain. Land was somewhere nearby. For 3 days, Steven watched the birds carefully. Studied their flight patterns. Tried to determine which direction they came from. Land was close. But which direction? How far? Steven couldn't see any islands yet. Steven faced his biggest decision of the entire ordeal. Should he stay with the failing raft and hope for rescue? Or try to reach land on his own? The raft was barely floating. But swimming would be extremely dangerous. Sharks still circled the raft daily. The distance to land was unknown. Steven's body was weakened from 70+ days of malnutrition. Swimming might kill him faster than staying put. But the raft was definitely dying. Steven chose action over hope. He would try to paddle toward where he thought land might be. Using his hands. A broken paddle. Anything to move the raft. His body was beyond exhaustion. Every movement caused pain. Following the birds. Hoping they would lead him to safety. His body was shutting down. Dehydration was severe despite the solar stills. Starvation was winning the battle. Steven's muscles had no strength left. Day 76. April 20th, 1982. Steven saw something impossible. A boat. 3 fishermen from the island of Marigalante near Guadeloupe. They spotted the orange life raft and came to investigate. They couldn't believe what they found. A living skeleton. Burned black by the sun. Covered in painful sores. Barely conscious. Weighing less than 120 pounds. But alive. Steven Callahan was still alive after 76 days alone at sea. The fishermen rushed him to shore. Then to a hospital. Doctors said Steven was hours from death. His body had consumed most of its muscle mass. His organs were beginning to fail. Another day at sea would have killed him. Steven had survived by the narrowest possible margin. He had achieved something truly extraordinary. He survived 76 days alone at sea. He drifted over 1,800 nautical miles across the Atlantic Ocean. He caught and ate dozens of fish with improvised equipment. He outsmarted sharks that could have killed him instantly. He created fresh water from seawater using broken equipment. He navigated without instruments using only natural signs. Most importantly, Steven never gave up hope. After his rescue, Steven spent weeks in the hospital recovering. He had lost over 40 pounds. His body needed to relearn how to digest normal food. His skin needed months to heal from sun and salt damage. But Steven's mind was sharper than ever. He had learned things about survival that few people could imagine. He had tested the limits of human endurance and discovered they were higher than anyone thought possible. Steven wrote a book about his experience called Adrift, 76 Days Lost at Sea. Published in 1986, it became a New York Times bestseller. The book stayed on the bestseller list for over 36 weeks. Millions of people read Steven's story and found inspiration. Steven also continued sailing. The ocean that nearly killed him couldn't keep him away. He designed new safety equipment for boats. Improved life rafts. Developed better survival techniques. He helped other sailors prepare for emergencies. Coast Guard training programs studied his methods. Marine survival experts consider his ordeal the gold standard for ocean survival. His techniques are taught to sailors worldwide. Steven holds 3 U.S. patents for marine safety innovations. Steven's story was featured in documentaries and television shows. I Shouldn't Be Alive told his story to millions of viewers. Ray Mears featured Steven in his survival series. Multiple documentaries have covered his incredible achievement. Steven's story reminds us that we all have hidden reserves of strength. Abilities we never knew we possessed. Determination that lies dormant until we need it most. Crisis doesn't build character. It reveals a character that was always there. If you are inspired by people overcoming impossible odds, make sure you are subscribed for our next First Achievers video.